Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, we're fortunate to have as our guest Steven Branfman. Steven is an internationally known potter, writer, teacher, and businessman. Living in Newton and working out of the Gorse Mill Studios in Needham, Steven's here today to share some of his outstanding work. During the program, we'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour of his studio and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate his outstanding craftsmanship. Let's start by meeting Steven and then finding out all about his work, the Gorse Mill Studios, and the Potter's Shop and School. Welcome, Steven. So delighted you're able to be here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
As you know, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit you in your studio a couple of weeks ago. Was so impressed, eager to have you share with viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest to just briefly hear a little bit about your background and how you developed your artistic interests.
Well, I was always interested in sports growing up, and when I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to go to college to be a physical education major. My interest in sports was despite the arts background and upbringing that I was part of. My mother was a musician. She went to the Juilliard School of Music. She went to the High School of Music and Art.
Wow.
She was a bassoonist, and she did some drawing in the house when I was growing up. Her brother, my uncle, was a surgeon, but he was a painter. If he had his druthers, I think he would have been a painter. My great uncle, so my mother's uncle, my great uncle, when he lived in Russia, which is where both of my families are from, my mother's and my father's, he made a living as a landscape painter. When he came to this country, he couldn't make a living as a landscape painter, so he became a house painter, but continued to paint. And one of our prized possessions in our art collection is an oil painting that my Uncle Charlie did when he was in Russia.
Oh, wonderful.
It's really beautiful. My great-grandfather, who I knew, who lived with us for the last few years of his life, made handmade clothing in the old country. When he came here, he became a tailor and continued to make clothing for people. So there was a lot of arts in my background. But I was into sports. I wanted to be a physical education major. I applied to college. I got in very early in my senior year, and then decided on a whim to take a sculpture class. My parents gave us art classes and music classes when we were growing up, and took this sculpture class, and it ended up changing my life.
Most definitely.
I connected with what the teacher was doing. She never called what we did art. She just called it making stuff. And we did all kinds of non-traditional things, full-body plaster casts. We went to the beach and made sand castles. We did all kinds of stuff. So that whole year went by, and I ended up winning the sculpture prize in my high school.
Fabulous.
And then went to college, intended on being a physical education major, got there, was completely turned off by my academic advisor, left his office, went and found the art department, asked if I could be an art major. They said, "Have you ever done art before?" I said, "I think so." And they accepted me as an art major, and that was the beginning of my art studies.
Wow. Well,
pottery, getting into clay was a whole different thing. I was majoring in sculpture, hard materials. My mentor was an Italian-trained marble sculptor and metal sculptor. He was a big, robust guy, and he was my mentor. I was working in hard materials, but in order to get a degree in art, you had to take a craft class. So we could take jewelry, metalworking, pottery, basket making, fabric design, stained glass, a couple of other things. I had no experience with any of them. I had no biases or particular interests in any of them. I put the name of each course on a slip of paper. I tacked them up onto the wall of my apartment. I stood back, closed my eyes, and threw a dart. And it landed on pottery.
Wow, well.
So I could be a jeweler right now instead. But
Well, we're thankful
but
that
I'm a
you
clay
had the
artist.
aim that you did. You know, we really want to spend the majority of the program on your craft. But there's also fascinating background of where you're working. If you could, in a real summary fashion,
Sure.
give us a sense of what the Gorse Mill Studios are, and just very briefly, its overall mission.
Yeah, so
that
the
we
Gorse
see
Mill
in the
Studios,
background
Gorse
here.
Mill Studios is an artist community. They are 33 artist studio condominiums, so we own our studios. I developed it with a partner in 2007, and the unique qualities, the things that make the Gorse Mill Studios unique, there are lots of artist communities and buildings all around the country and all around the world, and especially in eastern Massachusetts. What makes this project unique is that it's condominiums, number one, so we own our studios. I've never known an artist that didn't want to own their studio. So this is the first studio that I've owned after renting in 4 other places. They are work-only condominiums, whereas most artist communities like this are live-work. I didn't want it to be live-work because live-work situations often will morph into more living than working. And I wanted to be in an environment where there was an active community of artists making art. And the third component, which makes it completely unique, is that the special permit that we got from the town of Needham to do this indicates and requires that this building never be anything other than artist studios. So it can never be used as
Yeah.
anything else. It can never
Fabulous.
be anything else. It has to be, the units have to be used as working artist studios.
Well, we're going to quickly move ahead, and if the director can just stay focused on the images, can take us a little overview of what it encompasses as we
Sure. So
enter.
this is our main entrance and main lobby. And we have a central gallery which we all share. We have our own group shows as well as artists that we invite in, and we've had 3 or 4 international exhibitions in the gallery
Fabulous.
there. Yeah. It's 3 floors of studios. This happens to be the 2nd floor.
And then when we go downstairs, here we find our way into your studio.
Right. This is my studio space. So I have a large space on the lower level. This is my own personal space.
Could you point out, we have some nice shots of different aspects of it, the
Yeah,
various
this
areas.
is my work kind of station. These are my potter's wheels. This is where I make my work. You can see my tools and other kinds of objects that surround
Have the
me.
tools, that changed over years with different changes in other fields of technology? Has that impacted your work?
The only real significant changes that have taken place in the history of pottery has been electricity.
Wow.
I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah.
You know, the tools that we use. I have a vast collection of pottery in my house, and one of the pieces that I have, which I share with my students all the time, is a Mayan bowl made in the year 700.
Wow.
And I tell them that if I was in this Mayan potter's workshop, I could sit next to him and make pots with him using his tools and his materials. If he was transported to the future, aside from getting used to a little culture shock, he could sit right next to me and use my tools and make pots. That's how pottery has remained unchanged in
that's
thousands and thousands of years.
Fabulous to hear.
This is the main studio space. So we teach classes, we have studio membership. It's a very active and busy studio.
What's the Potter School like? What's involved there?
Yeah, so the Potter School is a membership-based studio. So our primary focus is studio membership. People with clay experience that don't have their own studios but want to have access to a studio without having to take a class, as long as they have enough experience to make stuff. They can join as a member, they get a key, they can come and go 24 hours a day, and they use the studio as though it's theirs.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. And a couple more shots that we'll focus on
These are
here.
our kilns, electric kilns, so that Mayan potter would be a little confused here, but he would be able to get used to it. And this again is back in my studio space, just some work in progress. There's finished work on the back wall, there's work in progress and a piece of finished work on the table, and my general workspace where I work.
Just gorgeous, gorgeous. I know we're shortly going to see a video clip, but before we get to that, I just have to ask you now, how did you develop your style and technique and interest in pottery since you first
Since
entered
I threw
the
that
field?
dart?
Right, exactly, exactly.
I threw the dart, I ended up in the class. I had never even touched clay before, except maybe as a child, which I didn't remember. I didn't even touch the clay yet. I was watching the teacher do it, the first demonstration on the potter's wheel that day, and he was just so fluid with the material on the potter's wheel that I poked my friend who was standing next to me and I said, "Dave, I'm going to be a potter when I grow up." And then when I touched the clay, that was the end of it. There was such an attraction to the tactile nature of the material. And then I was always interested in history and culture, and then I just got involved in the whole culture of pottery and vessel making.
You know, the clip that you provided us with does such a fabulous job building on what you were just sort of introducing us to. I think now will be a great time to roll in the clip, and then we'll continue our conversation and look at some of the exquisite work that you brought in as well. So let's look at that clip now, please.
I was always drawn to working with my hands, so it was very natural for me to study sculpture when I went to art school. My sculpture teacher was a big Italian, robust guy who apprenticed in Italy, and it was hard materials, wood, metal, plaster, stone that filled the studio. And then it was an unlikely encounter in a pottery class that changed my life. Suddenly the teacher began to transform a lump of clay. The material flowed off his fingers. I was mesmerized, I was enamored. It was as though he was waltzing with the clay. It was a dance. Before I even put my fingers into the soft, cool mud, I knew that this was the material that I had to work with. I'm Steven Branfman, and I work in the raku technique. A vessel is a container. It grows from the bottom up and the inside out. And many potters see the surface of their work as a canvas on which they decorate. I see the surface of my work as a skin. There's a difference, there's a force, there's a presence, there's a volume that's contained within. And it's this interior that defines the vessel. When I come into the studio to work, I know what I'm going to make. I know what each individual piece is going to look like. That begins with taking the clay out of the bag or the bucket, preparing it, and putting it on the wheel. The throwing process itself is one of solitude. It has a very high meditative quality. It's a very quiet and a very personal kind of experience that I have with the clay. But the most important thing to express is that making vessels is not random. I'm not making decisions as I go along. I have a shape in mind, I have a form in mind, I have a finished vessel in mind. And in fact, when I put the clay on the wheel, I'm already thinking ahead to how I'm going to glaze it, how I'm going to fire it, and what it's going to look like when it's completely finished. It was in graduate school that I was introduced to a Japanese firing method called raku. Raku is a process that offers a lot for me because it is historic, it is cultural. I'm very tied into the history of my craft, and yet it is very contemporary, it's very modern, and it's very individual. My raku work is often not recognized as raku, and that is one of the things that pleases me the most. When somebody looks at my work and they see that it's labeled as raku, and they comment, they say, this can't be raku. It's the colors aren't right, the surfaces aren't right, the textures aren't right, the shapes aren't right. And I just smile and I say that's what makes my work different and a little bit unique from kind of mainstream raku pottery. What differentiates raku firing from conventional firing is that in conventional firing, the work is fired over a period of 8 to 24 hours or even longer, and then the kiln is allowed to cool before the work is removed. A raku firing is much different. The firing can take as little as an hour, and the work is removed while it's still hot. The glaze is molten. At this point, the ware can be manipulated through fast cooling, through the application of other chemicals, and the effect of a carbon atmosphere around the piece. One of the aspects of pots and the vessel that's always attracted me is that a pot can be as valid and as aesthetic as a sculptural object, with the added benefit of it being functional and being able to be used. I'm often asked, especially by my young students, how can you be doing the same thing for so long? Well, it's not the same thing. Every encounter with clay is new, fresh, exciting, and it moves my work forward. It's what an artist does. What drives me today? It's the journey of making work, and that journey's not over.
Wonderful, and so inspirational, and just the way that you described your craft. What really stood out for me was the notion that you have it all in mind when you come to the clay. Mm-hmm. What goes on before that in order to be that ready in a way to know where you're going to go and even start thinking of, once it's shaped, what it's going to look like?
Right. There's a history and a chronology. You know, I don't walk into the studio, sit down and make things without the past always having some input. So my work is a constant journey from one piece to the next, to the next, to the next. There's I try my best to differentiate when I'm talking to people and have them understand the difference between random and spontaneous. My work is not random. When I say I'm not making decisions, what I mean is that I've got a plan in mind, just like you get behind the wheel of your car, you know where you're going, but you could change your mind. You could be spontaneous. Mm-hmm. You're still in control, you're still following your ultimate plan,
Great
but you may be
distinction.
diverted a little bit along the way. So that's how I approach my work. I'm inspired by different things that I see, different things that I smell, things that I touch. Being a member of the environment, being a member of our earth, there's constant inspirations and things that affect how I see things and how I bring that ammunition, so to speak, into my work.
Mm-hmm. You know, before we look at some of the pieces you brought in, we have some fabulous images as well that we'd like to highlight. And if you could offer just maybe a quick commentary or so about
So this
some
is an
of these.
example of chawan. Chawan is a Japanese tea bowl, Japanese style tea bowl. Chawan means tea bowl in Japanese. It's a form that I'm very dedicated and devoted to. I make them with the intention of them being used in the tea ceremony. And in fact, many of them that I've made that have been purchased are used in the tea ceremony. Another chawan.
Gorgeous.
That's a tall vessel. It's about 36 inches tall. All my work is made on the wheel. All my work is raku fired. This happens to be in the possession of Temple Aliyah in Needham in their art collection. Another chawan. This is a tea caddy. I make very, very few, other than the chawans, I rarely make anything that is specifically functional, but this is made as a tea caddy to hold either tea leaves or powdered tea. Mm-hmm. And this is a pretty significant piece of mine. This is a tall vessel, about 24 inches tall. It has inlaid colored glass, which is the color that you see in the surface. And this is in the possession of the San Antonio Holocaust Museum Memorial. And I donated this in memory of my aunt who passed away, who was a founder of the museum. And the title of this is Remembering Kristallnacht.
Wonderful, wonderful. We might have time to look at a couple more, but we definitely want to take advantage of these three large pieces that you brought in. The first one here, would you share what you've created?
Sure. So my work is all about surface. And it's about surface in the way, in the respect that the surface is designed to communicate the volume and the force and the pressure that is contained within the piece. So I am strictly a vessel maker. I make containers. They're not designed to be used in any functional sense, but they invoke a sense of function. And they certainly invoke, or my intention is to invoke, a sense of presence and a sense of form and a sense of pressure. So the textures are designed to enhance that and help communicate that.
Just for instance, how were you, if any, spontaneous in the creation of this piece?
So this was, a lot of the pieces, there's less spontaneity because of knowing how I'm going to texture the surface. So this piece, for example, the wall needed to be a certain thickness. The cylinder needed to be a certain height. I knew which tool I was going to use. So less spontaneity in a piece like this than in some other pieces.
How about the very colorful one to your...
So this one here, this has a slightly higher degree of spontaneity. I call this from my landscape series. So I could pick it up and just kind of
please
show it a little bit. So on this piece, the glaze is poured on in a fashion where I'm holding it like this and I'm literally pouring thick glaze on in the kind of direction and form of a landscape.
Wonderful.
So there's a higher degree of spontaneity there. This piece also has a deep surface texture. The texture is also enhanced by the different glazes that I use. Some glazes melt at lower temperatures, some at higher temperatures. You could see that on this piece as well, where the glaze here is not completely smoothed out, whereas the glaze here is. So those are some of the aspects, some of the technical aspects that I work with in order to be able to communicate and express what I want in my work.
And I know you've brought in two incredibly special pieces on the table nearby that has grown to be another very personal bond extension that pottery has meant to you and your family. Would you please share that?
Sure. Our oldest son, Jared, was a clay artist in art school, and at the end of his junior year of art school at the New York State College of Ceramics, he was diagnosed with spinal tumors. He battled the disease for 2.5 years, and in September of 2005, he passed away from brain cancer. And in the Jewish religion, the practice is to say a prayer called Kaddish every day for a year when a close loved one like that passes away. And my younger son and wife and I said Kaddish every day in the synagogue. But I also felt the need to do something individually and personally. And I went into the studio and I made a chawan, and then I made one a day for a year.
Wow.
And they were the only pots I made for that year. I didn't make anything else. And in 2015, on the 10th anniversary of Jared's passing, I held an exhibition of them, and it was called A Father's Kaddish. 365 Japanese-style chawans made, inspired by my son, and by my need to express myself in that way. And this was chawan number 1 of 365.
Gorgeous. So
And
powerful.
It's stored in a box. This is a Japanese storage box. It's called a tomobaku. Tomobaku is a Japanese storage box, and it's meant to express humbleness and humility, where you keep things stored away and you only take them out when you want to show them or share them with somebody.
And to tell viewers, there's an incredibly powerful videotape online that people could find or get in touch with you to find that chronicles this
Right.
in an incredibly touching manner.
Yeah, the exhibition, there's an online presentation of the entire exhibition, and there's a documentary film being made as we speak of the exhibition and of my 365 cottage chow lines.
And what also came out of this is most remarkable, what's turned into philanthropic effort that you and many others have been involved with for a good number of years now with the Pan Mass Challenge.
Yeah.
And here we see a picture.
That's Jared and my younger son Adam and me at our second Pan Mass Challenge, and this past year was our 16th. And we formed a team in Jared's memory called Team Kermit. And Kermit was Jared's favorite childhood character, and Not Easy Being Green became his mantra to help him through his treatments. And this is us during the Pan Mass Challenge, Team Kermit.
How many cyclists typically make up your team?
This year we had 76.
Oh, man.
And this year alone, we raised $519,000 for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute.
Oh, congratulations. So meaningful, so meaningful. That's a great shot.
Yeah, that's our Kermits. Everybody's got a Kermit doll on their helmet decorated in their way.
What's, before we wrap up in a minute or two, what's the reaction and feedback you get as you're riding through the race like this?
The first couple of years it was, oh, look at those frogs. And then maybe the second year it was, here come the frogs. And then it only took maybe 3 PMCs for people to begin to recognize that they were not just frogs. This is Kermit the Frog. Here comes Team Kermit. So we've really made an impact on the PMC and on the Dana-Farber, and it's humbling to say, but we've become an iconic image of the Pan Mass Challenge, which is so proud. You know, it makes us so proud and so meaningful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, through tragedy, what you've been able to give back, and I know gotten out of as much as well.
Yeah, it's as selfish as it is not.
Oh, well, we'll definitely look forward to you in many races to come.
Thank you.
You know, in wrapping up, anything to highlight at your shop and studio in the coming year?
We have activities all the time. We just finished our Holiday Open Studio event. There's Needham-wide open studios in May, the first weekend in May that we participate in. All the artists in our building will have their studios open. The building is open every day, and there is different combinations of artists who are in their studios. We in the Potter Shop and School have regular hours, Monday through Friday. You can come and visit us anytime, see our work, see the potters at work. Don't feed the potters, though. Be careful.
What's the best way for viewers to get in touch with you?
Best way, you can go on the website, thepottersshop.com, 2 S's, thepottersshop.com. And all of our contact information is there. You can peruse the website, see all the things that we do, and come and visit us.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, looking forward to making my way back again.
Great.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
It's
It's
my
fascinating.
pleasure. Thank you. It's been an honor.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.